بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته, and welcome to Fiqh al-Muamalat online course. And today we shall start talking about the Sharia contract, the list of Sharia contract. In the previous sessions we have covered various topics in Fiqh al-Muamalat, which could be regarded as an introductions and foundations to this new series that we are going to embark, which is the financial transactions. So we'll start from sales, al-buyu', then we go through the entire list of Sharia contract by providing their meaning and explaining their Sharia rules and basic fundamental requirements and how they are deployed in Islamic finance, business operation, being in banking, takaful, or Islamic capital market. And before that, let me provide a very descriptions, high-level descriptions on the contract that we are going to talk about. And here we are talking about a series of Islamic financial transactions, as we have mentioned in the previous sessions, that Islamic financial institutions, they don't use the interest-based bearing instruments, but they use a Sharia compliance contract as underlying to their product and services. And we have a different clusters in this list. I think we have highlighted a little bit part of them when we talk about the classification of contract, but just to recap in order to move on to the related Sharia contract. We have the clusters of sales-based contract, and we'll talk about the sales, al-bay'a, and others such as murabaha, BBE, salam, istisna, and others. Then the other cluster is a profit-sharing contract, whereby we'll be talking about mudaraba, musharaka, and others. And we have a lease-based contract such as ijara, operating lease, financial lease, and a forward lease. And we have fee-based contracts such as wakala, ju'ala, and we have other supporting and security contracts such as kafala, rahan, hawala, and qard hasan, and others. So this is the overall different clusters and some related what's called contract under each one of them. These classifications also could be regarded from the angle of equity-based and debt-based. So the equity-based such as mudaraba and musharaka, and debt-based such as murabaha and other sales-based transactions. And the third category would be the others. So equity mainly dominated by equity and debt contract. So let me start with the first contract, which is al-bay'a. Al-bay'a is the main fundamental contract in Islamic finance, not only in the Islamic finance, but in the Islamic financial transactions in overall, being in banking or otherwise. And it's the one that has been mentioned in the Quran al-Kareem, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى. So al-bay'a is the basic, is the fundamental contract that basically represent the typical transactions in day-to-day business transactions in the market. So al-bay'a or a sales could be defined, or it has been defined in Majalat al-Ahkam al-Adliya, which is a Hanafi-based reference to change a property for property. So exchange property over property. This is a kind of sales, and as you can see, the word of property is very generic and very broad, which shows that the sales could incorporate different types of transactions. It has been also defined by some jurists by adding the word earning. Therefore, it will be defined as a changes or change of property for property by way of earning, meaning that when you do the exchange, so there is an element of earning, meaning there is an element of profit. This is to exclude hiba and other kind of exchange where the earning would be there. if there is no earning, so basically the sales from this point and from this angle of definition cannot be comprehensive enough as far as the definition is concerned. So it is a kind of an exchange, and that kind of exchange will generate a kind of income, a kind of earning, kind of a profit. And this, the word that has been mentioned also in the definition, the word of property, this one will be exclude the usufruct. So the property here, typically we are talking about the tangible assets, and this one would include or will exclude the usufruct, which is the manfa'a, and that one will fall under the concept and the scope of leasing. So again, the definitions will exclude as well the ijara, because ijara or a lease, it's a scope, and definition is more related to the usufruct of the asset of the service of a person. So again, sales meaning the delivery of a defined good, a defined object which is in the possessions, which possess a legal value in exchange of something equivalent value called the price. So this is another more detailed and what's so-called definition with regards to the sales. A delivery, meaning this asset that we are talking about that represent the subject matter must be delivered to a third party. Delivery of a defined object, so this object should be well defined, as we have talked previously in the past sessions, when it comes to the quality and the quantity, when it comes to the descriptions of this object, it should be well defined to remove the potential of ambiguity and gharar and jahala, lack of information on the subject matter. Now, this object possesses legal value, so it has a legal value. It has also a custom value, meaning it has a value from a Sharia standpoint. Legal value here means a Sharia standpoint, because from Sharia view, some of the assets have no value, so they will not be captured in this defined and specific definition. An exchange, meaning this is the counter value of this object, in exchange of something equivalent in value called price. So the other one, or the other counter value that will be exchanged against this asset or this property that has been delivered. Again, it has a equivalent value. This one normally we call it the price. So from the definitions, you will have a goods and you have a price or a property or assets and price, and this price is equivalent in value to this asset, and this asset is accepted by Sharia, meaning it is Sharia compliance asset, and it is well defined in terms of quality and quantity and overall descriptions to remove the lack of gharar, and this one is has the capability to be delivered and hand over to the other party in order to claim ownership of this asset. So the consequences and the transactions of the sales will result the transfer of the ownership from the sellers to the buyer. So if you are talking about mobile, this mobile has a value, this mobile has specifications, has descriptions, and is capable or able to be delivered to the buyer, and you will purchase it with the equivalent price, that is $100. And when the exchange took place, so basically the money, the amount mentioned will go to the seller, and the mobile asset will be delivered to the buyer, and that kind of ijab and qabul, that kind of offer and acceptance that will take as a form of communications between the buyer and the seller will have an impact on the subject matter, whereby price goes to the sellers, and again the asset goes to the buyer, and ownership will be transferred. Uh, so from the perspective of the seller, so we are saying it sells, meaning he's selling. From the perspective of the buyer, we are saying it's a buying or is a buyer. So sellers sells, buyers buy. So there is a buying and selling. It depends from from which angle you look at it. And just one point to add is that these sales normally will be concluded um, uh, or not concluded, meaning that when the transactions um, happen, it could be concluded in binding or basically non-binding, meaning it is not concluded. And here it depends, I think with this point we have highlighted in details in the past, it depends on the what so-called conditions pertaining to the contracting party. And some of the also conditions pertaining to the what so-called asset, like for example we talked in the past about the wakalatul fuduli, so the fuduli or the meddlers who interfere in the business of others without authorizations, he may sell the asset on your behalf. So the asset will be concluded but not binding. Concluded but not binding because the person is not authorized basically to what so-called to conclude the sales. And sometimes is not concluded even if some of the what so-called conditions of the offer and acceptance, like for example al-khayar is a part of the ijab of qabul or part of the conditions embedded in the contract. I think this point we have highlighted before. So just to carry on a few points, the Quran al-Karim has mentioned al-Bay'a as one of the very important sales. And as I mentioned, the Quran says in Surah Al-Baqarah, basically, verses 275, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. It is a pronouncement that al-Bay'a is a very important contract, and it is permissible that people exchange property with the property based on the Sharia requirements with the objective of earning money, making profit, and accumulate wealth. And this one is different than riba. Riba is not allowed, meaning that you cannot accumulate wealth and generate money and a profit through riba as a means of wealth accumulation. That's why Allah Azza wa Jal say وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا, so it's not allowed to use it. But on the contrary, on the other hand, you can use a bay'a as a means of wealth accumulation. Of course, the Quran al-Karim here mentioned riba because in the past it was a thought that riba is a means of what's so-called wealth accumulation, and it's a part of business transactions similar to the sales. So sales, you do buying and selling and you generate income. So also you do borrowing and lending and generate income. So the Quran al-Karim here made very clear demarcations between the difference between the two, whereby sales, which is the trade that people knows, is permissible, and the interest which people practice through borrowing and lending is not allowed. So the other point is that sales is a very broad concept which include other types as well, and I do believe this point we will start to highlight them and cover them in the following sessions. This is just an introduction. Some of the things that fall under the bay'a is, for example, a sarf. Then we look how is the classification, because a sarf, which is money for money, is a bay'a as well. And sometimes commodity versus commodity, which is the muqayada, is also a bay'a. And what's so-called salam is a bay'a, and istisna is a bay'a, and al-wafa is a bay'a, and tawarruq is a bay'a, and alina is a bay'a, and bay'adain is a bay'a. So there are a lot of types of بيع المزايدة, the auction is a بيع, بيع الوضيعة or the وضيعة or the discount is a بيع, التولية is a بيع. So we have a long list of بيوع that fall under this main contract, which is a trade base, which is one of the leading basically classifications or one of the leading classes practice in the open market and also practice in the Islamic banking business operation, as we mentioned, being in banking or other business sectors. We'll stop here, then we carry on with the remaining discussions on sales in the coming sessions. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.